So as some of you might have noticed, I haven't made a video in a while. I've been stuck and I want to talk about that experience so I can hopefully move on and get back to making videos. I want to talk about what it's been like having a public platform, establish boundaries as a content creator, and talk about what that looks like moving forward. This is a video where I'm just going to get everything out. So I will be talking about my experiences these past few months. I understand that people are tired of hearing about the drama I've been in. First, I want to say that it gets to be drama for you because it's not your life, but this is my life. It's not actually drama for me. It's been very painful and I need to talk about it. And I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm pretty sure that however tired people are of this, you're probably not as tired as I am. So I'm right there with you. I'm talking about this to try to move forward and to move on with my life. And if you are tired of listening to this, I understand. This is a video that you probably want to skip. So I'm going to talk about some of my experiences. Some of the conflict I'll talk about is personal, and I'll keep information such as names private. But what I will say publicly is the pain around this conflict that has affected my ability to make videos. I really want to focus on talking with my audience on why it's been profoundly hard for me to write a script for new videos. And I would like to try to find healing so I can get back to making the video essays I want to make. So before I talk about this, I'm asking people to not watch this video on your streams. People have gained money, subs, and views off of using me for their content. I don't want them to continue to profit off of whatever painful experience I'm having. And I don't want people to fuel more conflict around it either. Because of that, I will keep visuals to a minimum in this video. I'm just trying to talk with my audience right now, not be farmed for content. Lastly, I will not engage with any back and forth around this video, which is another reason why I won't be mentioning certain names. I haven't made a video in months, and people are still making content on me, demanding that I respond and demanding that I do debates. And I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to talk about my experiences and express boundaries. And for me, that's all I intend to do with this video. Again, if that sounds like something you're not interested in, that's fine. You don't need to engage with this video, and I ask that you don't. I don't want to create more stress for anyone. With that said, I hope my intentions and goals are clear, and let's start the video. I'm going to focus on a very painful experience that I had with the community that I was in. It is actually this experience that has led me to having a profoundly hard time making anything new. There's quite a bit of background to this story, so some instances I describe will be a bit of a repeat, but for the most part, I'm saying it to provide context for this experience I'd like to talk with you about. A little more than a year ago, I was invited into an online Black leftist community. This was a breath of fresh air because if you don't know where to look, it can be hard finding Black spaces. So I was very appreciative of being invited into this community. Unfortunately, at some point, I'd found out that Vosh's audience had attacked some members of that community. And just a side note, from now on, I'm just going to call Vosh Ian. I learned that the name Vosh is a Black fascist female character that he invented, and needless to say, I feel really uncomfortable about saying that name now, so we're going with Ian. So I learned that Ian's audience had attacked members of this community I was invited into when he had conflated Black nationalism with Black separatism. It was really upsetting because, as I've mentioned before, I used to watch Ian's channel. I had been a philosophy major and had left Christianity, so I went through a militant atheist phase where I really valued what is now clear to me a condescending, rigid, and flawed idea of facts and logic. And to me, online leftist debates were an acceptable form of this flawed idea. At the time, I didn't understand how these types of debates are actually the antithesis to understanding, but once I saw how Ian attacked Black people and other leftists, I became disillusioned and paid closer attention. It wasn't until I got a shout out in a video that also gave Ian a shout out that I started to get more subs who also liked Ian's content, and they were very upset upon learning that I took an issue with him. So I made a video saying why this was the case. He attacks other leftists and particularly Black leftists, but overall I did it because I wanted to defend the community I was in. I had seen how Ian's community treated some of these people, especially around the conflation of Black nationalism and Black separatism, and how he compared these ideas to Nazism. I thought it was horrible that so many white leftists were attacking Black leftists from a fundamental place of misunderstanding. And while I don't personally subscribe to all the views of the community I wanted to defend, I still found it very important to be able to understand these views. And so I made those videos to point out this gross misrepresentation and to clarify these issues with my new subscribers. Given my size of my channel at the time, I didn't even think that Ian would see this video. However, he responded and invited me on to stream. And after some back and forth, I went on and we had a debate. After the debate, a lot happened. One of the instances that really impacted me was when an Indigenous activist came onto Ian's channel and stated that I was using inflammatory language in regards to LANDBACK. I found this characterization to be very hurtful, and it's this instance that led to a series of very painful events in the community that I was in, which led to my difficulty in making videos. This characterization of me being inflammatory was painful because there's obviously been a constructed narrative of me that I've been making LANDBACK to be about white genocide and ethnic cleansing. Not only was this an association that I never made, this also wasn't even close to the purpose Ian had stated for having me come on stream. And if I'd understood afterwards that almost everyone had thought that the debate was about LANDBACK, I would have addressed this more clearly in my last video. So I actually want to take a moment to be clear about that here. Before I begin, I want to say again, I didn't know or plan on talking about decolonization in the debate. We'd actually agreed to talk about the criticisms I made in my video, which were directed towards the racist claims that Ian had made towards other Black people. We had never agreed to talk about colonialism. I'm not an expert on this topic, and I don't claim to be. But even if I was, I simply would never want to debate these topics. These are issues that need to be talked about in an educational framework, not in the arena of debate. There is a belief floating around that if you can't debate something, you don't understand it. But as we've seen time after time, misinformation is often spread in these kinds of debates, and this information does quite a bit of damage to marginalized people, and only rarely does this misinformation get corrected. So let's clear up some misinformation. First, I'm not advocating for an ethno-state. I don't recall how Ian brought up ethno-states, but in my videos, I explained the difference between Black nationalism and Black separatism, because Ian previously had these ideas mixed up. If you want to understand the differences between these ideas, you can watch that video. In short, though I'm not a Black separatist and I have a lot of issues with Black separatist groups, Black separatism is a complicated topic. And it's certainly not the equivalent to white nationalism, white supremacy, or Nazis. This comparison is a gross misunderstanding. I know Black separatists who simply don't want to be around white people. Why don't they want to be around white people? Because white people often struggle with racism. Let me try to think of an example. LeftTube. Even in an instance where white leftists say that they're anti-racist, so many are fear-mongering the very racist notion of white genocide, and then are going after other Black and racialized people from this place of misunderstanding. It seems to me that it's easier for a lot of white leftists to picture us as angry brown people who want retribution, rather than try to understand our struggles for liberation. So even in the supposed place where white people are supposed to be anti-racist and have Black Lives Matter in their Twitter profiles, people are still racist. And not just a little bit racist where they want to include Black people, but they just don't know any Black people to include. No, they're literally talking about white genocide, which is a primary Nazi talking point. Okay? Just let that sink in. So there are Black people who don't want to be around white people, not because these Black people are supremacists, but because they don't want to deal with racism. Even if you're not a Black separatist, there are Black people who understandably want to be in mostly Black spaces. This could look like moving to a Black area or intentionally being part of Black communities. In these instances, this is actually just people trying to protect themselves from the very real racism that exists and wanting to be around people who understand them. So if someone is practicing Black separatism in this way, where they are protecting themselves and not hurting anyone, leave them alone. When I say that people don't have to live with their oppressors, that is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about ethno-states. Ian is. Many people believe that this sentiment is actually about white genocide or white ethnic cleansing. I believe that Ian brought up the concern for white genocide because I had mentioned Kenya reclaiming businesses. There are a number of African countries who did this after colonialism because most of the wealth and power was still owned by the colonialists. In other words, even though colonialism had ended in title, it still had ongoing effects in wealth, power, and resources. So there are ways that the post-colonial governments took that power back. Again, this doesn't have to do with retribution, it has to do with power imbalances and attempts to move toward greater equity. In these instances, when a given state takes back businesses, at times the countries who colonize that area stop having access to resource extraction, and sometimes the colonists running these industries leave. However, the ongoing effects of colonialism are still massive issues in post-colonial African countries. My main point is that fixing these problems by way of expropriation is not an ethnic cleansing, as I've seen people argue. Reclamation of land, wealth, and industry is only one of the many means by which post-colonial states try to rectify the legacy of colonialism. But what I really need to stress is that though African countries have done this, I'm not at all suggesting that this is what LANDBACK needs to be. I was simply answering Ian's questions about what certain things look like from examples I happen to be familiar with. My theory is that the conversation around LANDBACK blew up around the clips of the debate that went viral, rather than the debate itself, where a different conversation took place. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, I think it is this line of thinking that led to Ian asking if I would be okay if Black South Africans removed white South Africans. My response to this is that they would have the right to, but that would be harsh, and that's not what they're going to do. That really should have been that. In the debate, I also say multiple times that genocide is wrong. That also should be that. The racist fear of white genocide should never have been brought up, especially not in this context. But since Ian did this, it should have ended when I said those things. But to be fair, we are talking to white people, and not just any white people, debate bros. So I'm not surprised that he would feel that it's appropriate to compare this to the Holocaust and understand it as that. I've already said this many times, but I feel the need to stress this again, how racist it is to compare this to the Holocaust. It's racist to Jewish people, it's racist towards Black people, it's racist towards other colonized people. Removing the inheritors of a colonial project is not what I or others want. It's not what's being suggested. It's not the proposed solution. Despite being colonized and genocided for generations, with the continuation of genocide to this day, colonized people are not seeking to remove the people who most benefit from the ongoing colonial project. They are fighting for a more equitable world for everyone. They are doing this in the face of genocide. That is the situation that so many groups of colonized people are in. And if Ian truly understood that, I don't think he would dare bring up the very racist notion of white genocide. It is so inflammatory, racist, and condescending. To be afraid and focus on the idea that Black and Indigenous people are going to do to white people what they've done to us is at the core of colonialism, whiteness, and white fragility. And that is simply not what any of these decolonization movements are about or have been about. In spite of everything, colonized people have come together to end systems of oppression, to work on creating a functional and equitable world for everyone. So instead of demanding that I and other racialized people answer for something that we're not advocating for, support the work we're actually doing and do your best to understand our experiences. Accusing Black, Indigenous, and other racialized people of wanting this is profoundly harmful and hurtful. So stop it. Hey everyone. Basically, when I was writing this script, I tried to speak very, 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 very carefully. Actually, somebody said to me, they said, I know why Professor Flowers likes video essays. It's because no one can talk back. It's actually not it. I actually have a lot of anxiety. I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing, and I think I normally have some sort of anxiety around that, so I like scripting out what I'm going to say so I can say what I want to say in the way that I know I want to say it. Especially with this video, because it's been under so much scrutiny, I felt the need to do that. It actually took me months to write the script for this because I've needed to talk about this for so long, and I've been afraid to, and I've also felt like I really need to say something about this. But as I'm editing it, I'm like, this is actually not quite communicating what I'm saying. What I'm getting at is the ability to talk about these things. We need to be able to talk about this without white people assuming that Black or Indigenous people want a white genocide. I think a lot of white people have no idea how much so many racialized people censor ourselves. No idea. I think that's why it's really just kind of an insult when you have Republicans complaining about being censored, when on a daily basis, racialized people, we have to censor ourselves. And people are going to hear me say this, oh, of course you have to censor yourself. You want a white genocide, you want a Black ethnocide, of course you have to censor yourself. And what I'm getting at is that racialized people often have to censor ourselves because white people will only be able to understand what we're saying in those terms. That is such a problem that we constantly have to watch what we say, because it's white people are not going to get it. People don't want to fight today. People are trying to have a good time. We'll just not talk about it. I think a lot of racialized people, especially Black people, are in that position of we just can't talk about this, because if we say it, something that's very traumatizing to us is going to be taken as being about white people in a way where they're going to center themselves, and then they're going to weaponize that against us in a way that's very traumatizing on a subject matter that's already very traumatizing. And this is just kind of a case in point. And I really want to stress that this is not a good thing to do. That especially if you're a leftist, it's good to get to the point where you can hear what's going on for racialized people and not feel threatened by that, and instead be co-conspirators where we can be in this together. Indigenous people need to be able to talk about frustrations that they have about colonialism without it being about genocide. Black people also need to be able to talk about our frustrations with colonialism without it being about genocide. And for me, that's what I'm trying to do, is to be able to just protect that space that white people are often not willing to give. It's not that I want to genocide anyone. It's not that Indigenous people want to genocide anyone. It's not that LANDBACK is about genocide. It's not about any of these things. It's about that as leftists, we really need to be able to give each other this space without making it about white people, without centering these voices. I hope that as people, we can do that, let alone being leftists, but I think especially as leftists, we need to be working towards this. I'm worried that if I say this, it'll be taken out of context, that it will be not understood, and no doubt, like, there's plenty of people who I don't think will understand this. But I don't think that non-white people have a special superpower that makes us be able to have an easier time understanding these things. And if white people want to be collaborative, if white people want to be helpful and supportive of these racialized issues, white people really need to deal with this facet of white supremacy. Thank you so much for listening. Now back to the video. Instead, let's consider what colonized people actually want. One way we can do this is to look at history. We can look at what has actually happened instead of making up extreme hypotheticals that paint brown people as retributive. But most importantly, we can just ask colonized people. And we'll find that not only is retribution not a part of these movements, we'll also find that decolonization is about sovereignty, ending systems of oppression, and ending white supremacy. And particularly in the US and Canada, the decolonization movement of LANDBACK starts with respecting broken treaties. We should be excited about this and collaborate to dismantle systems of oppression that hurt all of us, rather than being afraid of this movement. So please stop focusing on white genocide and ethnic cleansing, and instead focus on what colonized people are actually talking about. So I know that some of that was a repeat of what I've said before, but I really want to make it clear what LANDBACK and decolonization are, because these are such important topics. So going back to the story of why it's been hard making videos. I tried to clear up this confusion about LANDBACK by going on people's streams and saying that LANDBACK is not about white genocide or white ethnic cleansing. It's about indigenous sovereignty, respecting treaties, and ending systems of oppression. Some people have asked, if I care so much about LANDBACK, why haven't I brought an indigenous person onto my channel, like when an indigenous person went onto Ian's channel? If I invited an indigenous person on during the fallout of this debate, that person would likely be accused of wanting retribution, and in that process, more leftists would likely start associating LANDBACK and this person with the desire to create an ethno-state. It would likely just be an expansion of the narrative that I'm described in, which is that I'm a crazy black lady who wants white genocide, and I don't want that to happen to someone else and for them to have to deal with the fallout of that. Also, as a black person who's been tokenized many times, I don't want to put an indigenous person in a position where they might feel that way. So when I invite indigenous people on, I want it to be in a different context, in the spirit of camaraderie, and not something that could potentially rope them into this mess or make them feel tokenized. So instead of doing that, I naively thought the best way to clear up misunderstandings on LANDBACK was to go on people's streams to talk about it. I say naively because almost everyone who had invited me on wanted to hear about drama, not actually clear up the record on what LANDBACK is. One of the first streams I went on pushed this narrative that I'm a crazy black lady who wants to genocide or ethnic cleanse white people. I was invited to talk on stream in what was described to be a low pressure environment by someone who described themselves as being kind and understanding. But instead, the questions focused on kicking out white people. I tried to explain that indigenous sovereignty means that indigenous people have a right to their land and what to do with it. And most importantly, kicking people out is simply not what LANDBACK is about. Again, LANDBACK is about indigenous sovereignty, and it starts with respecting broken treaties. I made sure to stress this to try to dispel any further potential misinformation. If you don't believe me, I will upload a mirror of this original conversation. I'm uploading a mirror because I don't want to give this person any more traffic or for them to continue to profit off of what was a very painful experience for me. Some people had said that I had been tricked into going onto this drama stream and pointed out that this streamer had done this to other people before, and I'd actually defended this person and said that this wasn't a trick, it was probably just a misunderstanding about the goal of this conversation. Later on, I asked this person to take the video down because I was worried that people's takeaway would be that LANDBACK is about ethnic cleansing. This person said that I looked like an idiot, and this was when I realized that this wasn't a misunderstanding. I was there to be humiliated and content farmed. And the narrative being pushed wasn't that LANDBACK was about ethnic cleansing. Instead, the narrative being pushed was that I was a crazy black woman who was stupid enough to believe that LANDBACK was about these things. And that was a very painful realization. I thought back to how I left the stream when I realized that this conversation wasn't going anywhere. Towards the end, I was trying to convince this person that being a light-skinned black person isn't the same as being white. And then I started thinking, this has been really weird. This is a weird conversation and I don't want to argue about these things. So I apologized and said that I was just feeling frustrated and needed to leave. And when I look back on that, I realized that me saying this wasn't understood as me trying to own my own emotional state and leave a situation that I felt uncomfortable in. It was instead understood as me being an idiot who deserved to be humiliated. And I think about that a lot. It was a very painful experience. And so it was very hurtful to be accused of using inflammatory language by an indigenous person when I'm not the one carelessly bringing up these racist notions of white genocide and white ethnic cleansing and trying to stop this narrative of LANDBACK being about any of those things. Whether this person intended to or not, this exact accusation was then used to push the narrative of me being a crazy black woman who is seeking violence against white people. I feel very hurt by this because if the tables were turned and an Indigenous person was being accused of wanting a white genocide by a group of mostly white people, I would not have sought out Ian to go on his stream, ignore that him and other streamers were the ones bringing up these racist notions of white genocide and white ethnic cleansing, and then go on to blame the inflammatory rhetoric on the person of color trying to speak against it. I'm not her, but I wouldn't have done that because I think that would probably be really hurtful to that individual and also perpetuate the issue of Black and Indigenous people being painted as wanting retribution towards white people. That was what was hurtful about that experience. I didn't have an issue when she talked about her experience with LANDBACK, and I agree with her statements that this is stolen land, and at the same time, this is other people's homes as well. That's all good in my book. My issue is with how this person helped to mischaracterize me to an audience of mostly white people, and how that fed into the narrative of me being a crazy Black woman seeking to genocide and ethnic cleanse white people. That really hurt. It was after this event that I reached out to the community I was in and asked for some emotional support. It was reaching out to this community and what happened after that is the reason I've struggled to make new videos. For the most part, the community I was in had advised against the debate, while others in that community said that it would be okay if I debated Ian as long as I attacked him, and I agreed with this stance on attacking. So many people have tried to call Ian in what at least to me seemed to be a kind and reasonable manner, and the people who tried to call him in were then vilified and harassed for weeks or months afterwards. Many of those people left Twitter because of the harassment from Ian's community. He's also painted Black and Indigenous people as not-to-like figures multiple times. My debate is not the first time that this has happened. It's not the second time, it's not the third time, it's not the fourth time. This has happened multiple times. There have been multiple times that Ian has pushed this idea of ethnostates and retribution towards white people while debating Black and Indigenous people who wanted nothing to do with the sort. And then Ian's community goes on to attack these people. We are way past calling in. And I agreed with his advice to attack. My approach wasn't to call in, but to laugh at how ridiculous this was and then leave. However, I didn't succeed at this. I ended up trying to sincerely answer Ian's questions, which led to him bringing up white genocide and Black ethnostates. Because I actually tried to answer Ian's questions rather than punk him out, the community I was in expressed frustration about me not being aggressive enough during the debate, believing that I was too nice and overall I shouldn't have debated him in the first place. I understand the frustration at seeing people debate Ian. So often people debate Ian and think it will be different this time, only to be harassed indefinitely. I myself have come to understand this frustration as I've seen others repeat this pattern, and I'm sorry that I also put people through that as well. The community I was in expressed valid criticisms around this, and it seemed like we had come to an understanding and were on good terms. And because I had the belief that we were on good terms, I thought it would be okay to reach out to them and talk about how I felt mischaracterized by this Indigenous activist on Ian's stream. I have other friends that I should have reached out to instead, but I wanted to reach out to this community because there had been a number of times in the past where people had asked for support, and we all came together to do that. I found these moments of giving support to be very profound, and so at the time, I thought it would be okay if I asked for support as well. But when I said that I felt hurt and asked if it would be okay to talk about it, they didn't want to give support, and that's fine. People are tired of talking about debate bros, and I can understand if people aren't up to it. I would never want to ask for help from people who don't feel up to that. I can have a hard time asking for support because who wants to be that person where you ask for help and then realize that you're bothering someone? I don't want to be that person. So I felt embarrassed that I reached out to people who I thought would be okay with that. But if people don't want to, that's actually not a problem. And I appreciate when people communicate with me that they're not up for it because it helps me understand where people are at so I can respect people's capacity and desire to engage. What I did feel very hurt by were the reasons they gave for not wanting to give support and how these reasons were communicated. These reasons were communicated in what I found to be an extremely hurtful and dismissive way. One reason they didn't want to give support is because they said that they had already told me about the harassment I would receive, which is fair, at least to some extent. I also expected harassment, but I want to say, I don't think anyone expected it to go on for how long it has and is still happening. I also didn't realize that there's an entire debate sphere where everyone is some type of drama streamer. These people do debates and content farm off of the drama of other debates in order to gain money, followers, subscribers, and validity. In other words, this is the clout that people keep on referring to. This is why I think being in this particular streamer sphere is fundamentally an issue. If you're going to build an entire network where your income profits off of the conflicts between other leftists and the people in your own community, this will probably make more problems than it solves. It's not just a few people, it's an entire machine. And just about everyone who's a part of that machine content farmed me and pushed this narrative of a crazy Black woman who wants a white genocide. All this to say, when this started, I had no idea about this network and how people in it would content farm me to this day. Now, with that said, some people are saying that there's a conflict between streamers and video essayists. To me, this seems like an obvious way to try to polarize the issue. There are certainly streamers who are not a part of this toxic culture. To me, this issue is specifically with the culture of debate bros and those who pick up their scraps for content. In this culture, winning is more important than the spreading of accurate information. And because winning is so important, you need to have an enemy to win against. So, for whatever reason, instead of just winning against Nazis, debate bros have decided to also make whatever women and racialized people who disagree with them their enemies. And when they were called out on this, they claim that these criticisms are in fact leftist gatekeeping. To me, it's this toxicity that's the issue, rather than having an issue with streaming itself. So before the debate, I didn't know about this entire sphere of debate bro culture and that I would become a content farm. I did know that I was going to be painted as a Nazi-like figure after debating Ian. I had made a video on how he does this to other black people who have disagreed with him, and I didn't think I was going to be an exception. But the way that this happened was particularly extreme. When someone goes on Ian's stream to debate, there are usually only so many views. Later on, the stream gets cut up into videos, and sometimes the debate makes a final cut, and this also only gets so many views as well. However, for whatever reason, my particular debate with Ian blew up. If you were a leftist on YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, you probably couldn't escape hearing about this debate. Hundreds of thousands of people saw clips from this, and people are still making content on this. And I don't think anyone knew it would blow up in this massive way. Another reason why I didn't see this level of harassment coming was that I didn't realize that so much of the online left, or really the white online left, simply does not understand the world in terms of colonialism. I've been in a number of racialized spaces that discuss colonialism, and this gave me the naive impression that white leftists had at least a basic understanding on this topic, but that it just wasn't seen as important. And I was wrong about this. It seemed that the majority of people in these spaces just don't understand colonialism. I think this is evidenced by people calling the self-determination of colonized people, a term recognized and used by the UN, a Nazi talking point, and then going on to push the notion of white genocide, an actual Nazi talking point. Call me naive, but I didn't see that coming. And I didn't see that happening on such a mass scale for so long. I took a social media break for a month, and when I logged back onto Twitter, it was still happening just as strongly. People were still arguing about white genocide without me even being there to provoke anything. It had taken on a life of its own. It only got better for me when I got a moderator who chain blocked thousands of people. And even now, when I haven't made a video in months, people who say they're leftist are still making videos on me, pushing this narrative of a crazy black woman who wants a white genocide, white ethnic cleansing, and black ethno-states. All that to say, when it comes to harassment, I think it's fair when people say, I told you so, at least to some extent. But I don't think anyone knew it would go on for this long and this intensely. Moving on, another reason that this community didn't want to give support was that even though I tried to follow their advice in attacking Ian in the debate, I failed at that. And this failure wasn't seen as me trying to listen to their advice but not succeeding. It was instead seen as me not caring about what they had to say. But I really did care and had asked their opinions because I valued and respected their thoughts. Lastly, another reason that they didn't want to give support was that some people from the community I was in believed that I was talking with them not because I valued their opinions, but because I needed something from them and wanted to take. And I found this to be very hurtful. Up until that point, even though people in that group didn't like to debate, people had expressed appreciating the videos I made describing the racist issues around Ian and how his community treats black people. And I was really glad that I could make something that they appreciated and where they felt heard. I respected their opinions, so I made these videos in large part in their defense because I valued what they had to say, not because I needed anything from them or that I wanted to take for myself. I wanted to defend them, and I stand by that defense. So many white leftists had compared a black liberation movement to Nazism. And this had happened because once Ian made this claim, very few people could be bothered to look into it. People couldn't be bothered to look into black revolutionaries, the history of the Black Panther Party, the history of the civil rights movement. No, people apparently were afraid of a black liberation movement because Ian had said so, and his audience had gone on to attack black people from their misunderstandings. At the time, it seemed that white leftists couldn't be bothered to learn more about this history. Instead, it was much easier to be afraid of black people. So I wanted to say something about that and how I saw other black people being treated. It didn't have anything to do with growing my channel or chasing clout. This message explained to me why the group I was in didn't want to support me was stated in the main discussion thread of the group. Anyone in the group could see it. To me, this was a very humiliating and careless place to say all of this, especially in the context of this being a very vulnerable moment for me where I'm asking about emotional support. After I left the group, I got a message from another person in that community in regards to this. I honestly thought it was going to at least acknowledge how messed up of an experience it was to have all of this said in the place and way it was said. But instead, this new message went on to elaborate on why people don't want to give me support, which I honestly feel Like, I got the message. Like, I don't really know what to say. Like, that was pretty brutal. The previous message already saying it was like very clear. Like, I didn't really need another message going further into this. I got it, you know. It also mentioned holding me accountable. For me, this is what finally pushed me over, and this is why I've had such a hard time trying to move on and getting back to making videos. One of the points made was that people of color are not the same as being Black, and I should expect other people of color to be anti-Black as well. First, I never made the misunderstanding that other people of color are the same as Black people. As a Black person, I literally live this reality every day. I don't need a reminder. And this is certainly not why I felt hurt by this Indigenous activist. I felt hurt because this Indigenous activist, whether she meant to or not, helped contribute to the narrative of me being a crazy Black woman who wants to genocide or ethnic cleanse white people. I'm surprised by this because when I'm in activist spaces, I often meet people who are well aware of the racial dynamics at play. When I hear Asian activists talk about Asian hate, it's not uncommon for those activists to also acknowledge the racism towards Black people that Asian communities can enact. I get a sense from both Black and Asian activists that they are standing together in the fight against racism. I've seen Indigenous activists talk about how COVID and the government's lack of response to Indigenous communities is a form of the ongoing genocide that Indigenous people face, and oftentimes, Indigenous activists will acknowledge that other racialized communities are suffering under the government's lack of response as well. When I'm in activist spaces, the racialized people who are there, and even the white people, yes, even the white people, seem to understand the scope of racism and the racial dynamics at play. Even if we're focusing on the racism that Indigenous people face or the racism that Asian people face, when I'm in activist spaces, I get the sense that we are in this together. That's at least been my experience. So yes, I was very surprised that an activist would go out of her way to characterize a Black person who is trying to end the narrative around LANDBACK being about ethnic cleansing as being the one who's inflammatory. That genuinely surprised me, and that really hurt. It had nothing to do with misunderstanding people of color as being the same as being Black. This message also said that I should generally stop talking to liberals, but the fact of the matter is, I generally don't do this. I'm in left-leaning spaces, and I'm generally interacting with anarchists and communists. And either way, if I do interact with liberals, that is my choice. I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm an adult. I decide for myself who I talk to. Similarly, I was told that in general, I shouldn't interact with non-Black people. Again, who I interact with is my choice. I want my channel to be a place for all people who want to end systemic oppression, where we can come together and have conversations about these issues. I want to make content that is humanizing to marginalized people, where we can show each other that we are all in the same fight. I've had experiences where I've been able to stand side by side with other racialized people and white people. Yes, even the white people. And it feels like we're in the same fight against racism. Now, especially with white people, these experiences are not the norm. But when these experiences have happened, they have been very healing, and most importantly, showed me that it was possible for all of us to work together. And I want my channel to cultivate that kind of community. That said, I will never water down issues of racism to make them more digestible for white people. That's the balance that I'm going for. If you're not interested in that, I'm not going to ask you to come. But if you want to go, then let's go. That's what I want this channel to be. And this person had no right to simply tell me that I shouldn't interact with non-Black people. I can understand having a concern about how white people generally have an issue with racism and how people of color can still express anti-Blackness, but you can't just tell me if I should or should not interact with non-Black people. That is my choice. And I will say it is so frustrating that on one hand, this person reprimanded me for interacting with white people and non-Black people. And on the other hand, so many white leftists are accusing me of being a Black separatist who hates white people and even wants to genocide them. To me, both instances are people simply deciding who I am for me without me being a part of that conversation. This message also stressed that I can be sure to find anti-Blackness from other people of color, but that Black people really do support each other. And what's so frustrating to me about this is that this person, while telling me that Black people really do support each other, was also explaining why they don't want to give support. I do want to say that Black people definitely showed up. Yes, thank you. It was really amazing to see the way that Black people look out for each other. That was and is incredible. And it makes me really proud to be reminded of how caring Black people are. And I also want to acknowledge that while I've experienced non-Black people expressing anti-Blackness, there have been a large number of people who have been very supportive. There have been Indigenous people who have been supportive, even when it comes with the risk of getting sucked into this racist narrative of white genocide. And even though this is an issue of mostly white people pushing this racist narrative, there have also been white people who have stood against this narrative being pushed. Yes, even the white people. So don't tell me that I can't expect support from non-Black people when non-Black people have also shown up. Towards the end of this message, it was also said that the best thing I can do is take the L. But I don't feel like I've lost because I don't see myself as being in a battle trying to win. I'm trying to express how I feel. And I think a lot of people don't express how they're feeling for the sake of it. So it can be really confusing to see people doing that. I think for them, it's hard to understand that expression as anything but trying to win or chase clout. But I am generally just trying to express myself, find healing, set boundaries, and clear up misinformation. It's not about winning or losing for me. People keep on saying that I took on Ian, but he kind of took on me. As I've said before, I didn't make the video on Ian to take him down. I made it to defend the community I was in and to let new subscribers know why I was taking hardline with Ian and Debate Bros. I feel like I accomplished that goal and I feel good about that. I'm not trying to win anything here. He also invited me on to debate, and though I didn't get what I intended out of the debate, I also don't regret it. Like I said, this isn't the first time that Ian has debated a Black or Indigenous person and brought up the fear of ethnostates, white genocide, or retributive violence towards white people. This isn't the second time, this isn't the third time, or the fourth time. This has happened multiple times. These debates are then unlisted and forgotten about, while Ian's community continues to attack whatever Black or Indigenous person who stood up to him. But he can't do that with this debate. He can't unlist it and expect everyone to forget that he brought up the fear of white genocide and Black ethnostates, and that he enabled his community to harass me for months on end. And while it sucks getting harassed and existing solely as a symbol to so many people, the debate I was in helped people see just how racist of an issue we're dealing with is. So at least for me, this experience doesn't actually feel like a failure. It's a mixed bag. And while I wouldn't debate anyone again, and don't think that there should be debates, period. If the debate I was in can help people see an issue of racism on the left, I'm at least happy to have helped. It's not about winning for me. Another thing that this person told me was that me feeling the weight of this discourse is unnecessary. This seems to be in reference to the emotional pain that I've talked about. I feel the weight of this discourse because of the constant harassment I've received. And my emotional reaction is not something I can just turn on or off. It's something I have to work through. I would like to get to the point, and need to get to the point, where whatever harassment I receive doesn't bother me. But I can't just turn that on or off. I actually have to develop coping mechanisms, and I have to deal with the trauma of being harassed. And hopefully in doing this, I can get to a good point where I don't feel the weight of this anymore. Again, this is what I'm working towards, but it's not something I can just flip a switch and do. In this message, while I think that this person thought that their statements were constructive criticism, from my perspective, this message was not stated as criticism. They read as commands. This person's message told me how to run my social media, who to interact with, and how to feel. I'm much more mentally prepared for this when it comes to random people online, or even the people harassing me. But it's really jarring to have this reaction happen from people who you think you're in community with, who you think are your friends. To be clear, I'm all for having constructive criticism. I'm willing to listen to friendly advice from my community when it's not condescending, controlling, or dismissive. To me, this criticism looks something like asking what's going on for someone instead of making assumptions, using that understanding to bring up whatever issues you have, and letting this be a conversation where both people can be heard. That wasn't happening. This was someone deciding who I was and then telling me what to do. I'm not sure what gave this person the impression that this would be okay. I have heard that other people in this group had been treated similarly to me, but this felt so extreme, and I have to wonder what would make someone feel justified in being so condescending. In general, I've run into an issue where people believe that asking what others think is a sign of weakness, because it can show a sense of being unsure that is often associated with being feminine. I wonder if this is how they perceived me, since they believed that I needed something from them. I wonder if they maybe saw this as a weakness and felt the need to hold me accountable or put me in my place. I'm not entirely sure, but again, me asking what they thought wasn't me needing something from them. I did this out of respect. I'm a person who wants to hear what my community, audience, and friends think. And I want to hear this because I'm trying to be thoughtful and understand that my platform doesn't just affect me, but the people around me. That's why I ask people what their thoughts are. I also wonder if this condescension had something to do with my perceived age. A lot of people think that I'm much younger than I am and think that this means that it's okay to be dismissive. People tend to think I'm in my late teens or early 20s. I'm not. I'm 27. That's still young, but I'm closer to 30 than I am to 20. I am too old to be talked to like this. And even if I was 20 or younger, that's not an excuse to be condescending. All in all, I'm not sure why they thought talking like this to someone who they're supposedly in community with was okay. So much of what was said focused on telling me what to do, telling me to stop talking to certain people, telling me how to act on social media, and telling me to stop feeling the way that I do. And again, to me, this is so extreme. I feel the need to express how I feel. To me, this is not a weakness. This is a value I have. None of what I'm saying is about chasing clout or winning. It's about clearing up misinformation and expressing myself. When I do this, when I express myself, I don't need people feeling sorry on my behalf or feeling embarrassed in a way that leads them to wanting to control what I do. I find my power and humanity in this expression. I feel good about that. That doesn't ever mean that I won't feel scared, as I can imagine the ways that I will be judged around this. But it does mean that for me, this expression is worth whatever judgment I might receive, because it's in this expression that I find freedom. Hey, I'm editing this, and basically what I'm trying to say is that every time I talk about how I feel, people perceive that as me trying to win something, but I'm not actually trying to win something. People see me expressing my emotions as trying to win and tell me to stop it. They're actually telling me to stop expressing myself. And this is just something that's a very jarring experience. I'm not trying to win something. I'm just trying to talk about how I feel. And I wish people would stop doing this. It's really condescending. I think people see me as a helpless little girl or someone who just can't let something go and they just need to be told the hard truth to let things go. But I'm not actually doing that. I'm just talking about how I feel. And it's just so condescending to have all these people essentially say, stop talking about your feelings. Stop talking about how you feel. Stop talking about your experience. And to have this experience of just thousands of people going after me for months, people making videos on me that fuel harassment to this day, and then to have all these different people tell me what to do in a situation that they've never experienced is so condescending and so frustrating. You know, I'm trying to figure out this situation, and a part of that is talking about how I feel. So if you want to help me, give me space. Don't try to control or condescend to me. Hey everyone, this is another cutaway take that I have that I wanted to put in. Something just kind of happened to me where I was like, oh, this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. I was hanging out the other night. All my friends and I were talking, and I was telling someone how rough it's been the past few months. And there was this person who was also hanging out with us, and he just started kind of talking at me, and he just started giving me all this advice. And I was just kind of trying to be kind of accommodating, being okay, yeah, because it seems like he needed maybe say this for himself more so than me, because I really did not need that in that moment. But he started to say this thing where he was saying enough talking, more action. And I tried to explain to him that these experiences are not necessarily at odds. He talks a lot about being independent and self-made, and I think it's really great that this person has developed a sense of independency. I think it's great that this person has been able to be self-made. It's very tough out here to succeed. And so I don't think those things are necessarily bad. And also, I myself don't want to just be independent. I don't ever want to be a lone wolf. I'm only a lone wolf when I have to be. I would much rather work through my problems, struggles, and joys in the context of a community who can care for that, and I can care for them. So I was saying this, and he kept on saying, no, you need to do less talking, more action. This person has an assumption that I am not doing anything, not getting things done because I'm talking. And that's something that's just that's not how it works for me. I'll say that. Because in my experiences, these times where I take action is because I've listened to people. One of my friends made a video about her and her sister was just talking about all this messed up stuff that she had been through. Long story short, her husband had a stroke during the pandemic. He lost a lot of his memory. He needed a caretaker. And so she was the main caretaker for him. I think actually the only caregiver for him. They have kids, and she worked 17-hour shifts, 5 days a week. Oh, and then they couldn't get disability because they wouldn't give it to them for a really long time. They finally got disability. It wasn't even enough to cover rent. And then she hurt her ankle because of how much she worked, because of overworking herself. And she's the only income in the family besides the little disability that they get. And I remember hearing that, and I was like, that is fucked up. When I heard that particular story, I was like, we need to do something about it. So I asked her sister, who's my friend, Nick from Pink Spots. She's really cool. I was like, would you be down to do a fundraiser for your sister? And Nick was like, yeah. And we both put on this fundraiser. We didn't exactly reach our goal, but we also were able to raise enough to help her. This person that I'm talking with, going back to this story where I'm hanging out with people, this person's talking about enough talking, more action. And I'm literally so much of the actions I do are because I've talked with people and listened to them and been that's really messed up. I'm really sorry that happened. Let's do something about that. It's also really important too, because I think a lot of times when people can do stuff like that, it can really be charity. There's this problem over there, and, you know, I'll just throw some money at it, or, you know, but like this, you know, it was really different in this instance because when I hear people just talking about their story, their experiences, like when I hear that, I'm, you know, it doesn't feel like charity. It's like, I think I care about this person. This person's really amazing. And I want to like try to be a positive force for them and also like with them. And I think this isn't just important on a personal level, but I think this is actually important on a level of organizing, you know, especially like us as leftists. Like a lot of white leftists I notice feel really sorry for Black people. They like acknowledge that racism is real, and that's nice. But it's also like I look at them and I see like this guilt. And that's honestly an awful feeling for me because who wants to have the experience of meeting someone and then their reaction is when they see you as guilt? No one. A lot of white leftists, like, I'm glad that they're like realizing that racism is like an issue and they're trying to work through that. And I appreciate that effort. And also like the people who are like really down, people like really want to collaborate, be, you know, as, you know, one of my friends puts it, be co-conspirators. The people who tend to feel like that are people who are like in community with Black people, and where it's not that they're trying to do some sort of charity where they feel sorry for someone, where they are able to see the same struggle in each other and be like, I'm right here with you fighting this. People get to that point by being able to talk and listen. I do think it's actually very important to leftist movements because, again, there's so much pity for people. There's pity for the Black people. Oh, there's more Black people. You know, like we just don't need more pity. We need more care for each other. And you get that care by being able to listen to people. And again, I said this once, and these goddamn debate bros. These debate bros were like, but that means that if you just listen to people, that just means that because you're Black, you're right about racism. Oh, because you're disabled, you're right about disability issues. No, like people can be wrong. It doesn't matter if they're trans, it doesn't matter if they're Black, it doesn't matter if they're disabled. And like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about being right or being wrong. Again, oh, look, another dichotomy. I'm not talking about being right or being wrong. I'm talking about being able to understand people's human experience, which is the whole fucking reason why we're fucking leftist, okay? Because we fucking care about people. At least that's why I'm fucking here. I don't know why the these goddamn debate bros. I'm trying to say it's not about being right or being wrong. It's about having an understanding and also being able to give care to people who are seeking care, and then also being able to be cared for. And I do think that is like the foundations of these leftist movements. Like having the ability to do that is how we can do good work as leftists. And so I also want to just kind of stress that and be like, okay, it does annoy me on a personal level, but just actually like, let's dig into maybe like why we as leftists, like maybe should be more careful about this, because it does seem like kind of patriarchal, dismissive, in like a pretty severe way. Yeah, that's what I had to say about that. Okay, now back to the video. So please, I don't need people being controlling or condescending. I don't need that from people harassing me. I definitely don't need that from people in my community. So people who want to be supportive and also give input around my platform, it needs to be collaborative and overall respect my autonomy. Otherwise, you need to take it somewhere else. Overall, the reason I'm saying this is because it is this experience with this community that has led me to having a profoundly hard time making new videos. Notice that while I've mentioned some instances around debate bros, so far, most of these instances were mentioned to give context for this experience. This experience, by far, has been the most painful for me these past few months. And this experience wasn't from debate bros, it was from my own community. I've tried over and over again to describe why this has hurt so much, why out of everything, this particular instance has hit the hardest. What I can say is, from my experience, there were people in this community who had thought I had done these things for myself when I had spent the past few months trying to defend them. And it wasn't just that I had spent a lot of time and energy in doing this, I was also getting harassed. And while that part of it was a very painful experience as well, I honestly thought that it was worth it because at least I got to defend people that I cared about and respected. But for some of them, I don't think that this was understood at all. What I had done was seen as deplorable, and they were so disgusted that when I reached out to ask for emotional support, my request was offensive, and they saw it as something that I needed to be reprimanded for. And I felt that. I felt the exasperation, the anger, and the enmity, when my hope had been that if I could be of any use to this community, that I would have felt that at least I had done some good. And not only was that not understood, it was reprehensible. And then when that happened, it felt like the best thing I could do for the people around me was to end my life and to stop existing, because I clearly wasn't doing anyone any good. And I felt certain about this. I've struggled with suicide since I was a kid, and I had never felt so sure about dying. I didn't feel frantic or uncertain. It felt necessary. Luckily, my girlfriend talked me out of it. I found her to tell her that I was going to kill myself, and I really wanted to let her know that it's not her fault. It's not anything she did or didn't do. It's just that I needed to do this. And I asked her to please forgive me, and her response ended up talking me out of it. And I haven't been able to make a video since then. After this happened, every time I try to write a script, I keep on going back to what happened between that community and me. I think about all the ways that someone could misunderstand what I'm saying, and because who I am is not a part of their understanding of me, I then try to address each potential misunderstanding. And then the script ends up being about misunderstandings rather than what I actually want to talk about. I start to feel like I just shouldn't say anything at all. And then I start to have the same feelings of suicide, and I stop writing, and that's what it's been like these past few months. There are so many videos that I've wanted to make that I haven't done. For some of them, it feels as though their relevance is past, and I can feel life passing me by. In addition, whatever excitement I used to feel about having a budding YouTube channel has been overcast by all of this. I would still really like to continue being a content creator because I find a lot of joy and freedom by being able to express myself, analyze media, and trying to put attention on issues that I find important. But recently, I have not been able to bring myself to do these things, and I would really like to get back to that. Another effect that this has had on me is how I've interacted with the people I've met. I've been invited into other groups of people, and I've been too nervous to interact with anyone too much. I worry that if I talk to people that it might be perceived as me wanting something from them. Or I worry that if I talk too little, it might be perceived as me not caring about people. I would really like to just be myself and collaborate with people and perhaps even make friends. And I have a lot of anxiety around being able to do that because of these experiences. So I want to find healing and to move on so I can be present with other people I'd like to get to know in my life. This is ultimately why I'm talking about these experiences. I don't want anything bad to happen to the people I felt hurt around. I just want to move on. And I felt the need to talk about my experiences. When I look around at how other content creators have been treated, I don't think that my experience is actually that unique. I think there's something about having a platform that makes people think they're specifically entitled to you in some way that is seriously crossing a line. And so I very much felt the need to talk about this because this is such a common issue. And I think it's likely that I'll experience something like this again. My hope is that I'll be more ready for it next time it happens, and that at least my community and audience can understand that treating people like this is very harmful. Seeing that people have this understanding would help me feel a lot safer being a content creator and continuing to make videos. So this is really the crux of why I'm saying all this. My hope is that there can be an understanding around how hurtful it can be to treat someone in these ways and to try to move forward with this understanding. But before we get to what moving forward looks like, I want to talk about the harassment I've received and how it's affected me. Again, I'm not trying to have the last word or win against anyone. I just need it to be known that this has happened and to say that this kind of treatment of people is a problem. Again, if you don't want to talk about that, I don't want anyone to feel obligated to stay and keep watching. So let's start off with some of the less obvious issues. One thing that comes up is white people keep on making fun of my hair. I don't think white people understand how touchy this is. No pun intended. Don't touch my hair. Don't touch my fucking hair. Don't fucking touch it. Don't touch it. To be a white person making fun of a black person's hair. While black hair is a whole video on its own, long story short, hair is really important to black culture. There is a rich history of African hair, and this hair is the antithesis to white hair and European beauty standards. It's all too common for black children to be told to go home simply for wearing their hair in a way that grows out of their head, or for black employees to be told they have to change their black hairstyles when those hairstyles are accepted and trendy on white employees. Black people have a pressure to assimilate to hairstyles that are more acceptable to white people, and loving our natural hair is a radical act of love. Generally, black hair exists within this racial tension that is a facet of racism. So don't make fun of anyone's hair, especially don't make fun of black people's hair. While I don't think the comments making fun of my hair are about me being black, it still feels ridiculous to me because for most of my life, white people have made fun of my hair because of it being black hair. And it wasn't until I started styling my hair in a way that really defines my curls that white people started to like my hair. So even after my hair is styled in a way that is generally accepted by white people, it's funny to me that white people still find something to make fun of about my hair. It's just going to happen either way. And at the end of the day, though I would like to love my hair when it's frizzier, I also really do like the aesthetic it's in now. So for now, I'm going to wear my hair this way because I fucking want to. So fuck off because I want to. The next thing I want to talk about is being a symbol to people. Now, in some ways, being a symbol isn't necessarily bad. One example of this is how some people have made me the symbol of the person who will take down debate bros. And I'm not interested in this. I really don't like that my channel's grown in the context of talking about them. There are so many other things I want to talk about and focus on. And as I've already said, I never intended to take Ian or anyone else down. My goal was to defend people, stop misinformation, and talk about how I feel. So I'm not actually interested in being a symbol of a person who will take down anyone. And ultimately, this issue should not be put on racialized people or women. This is primarily an issue of patriarchal white men, and it's those people who need to take care of it. All this to say, this is just one example of how I symbolize something to people without my intentions being a part of that symbol. The more problematic thing I symbolize is obviously being the symbol of an angry Black woman who wants to genocide people. There will always be people who are there to accuse me of this, and having to deal with this for months on end is traumatizing. I've addressed this multiple times in multiple spaces. All I can do at this point is block people and ignore these comments, but even this is still exhausting. And what really upsets me is when I see people who have Black Lives Matter in their profile push this racist narrative of white genocide onto me. I always understood that having this in your profile can just be performative, but it still really hurts to see people confidently perpetuate racism while having this in their profile. Hey, so I was thinking about not reading any comments and just talking about this experience, but I decided that I'm actually going to read some of the comments that I get on a regular basis. I think that people need to see how messed up this is. This is a small window into what I've dealt with these past 6 months on a daily basis. Now, as I was filming everything for this video, I want to say that I was still receiving a lot of harassment, but as of recently, as I'm editing this, it's gone down significantly. Funny enough, they're distracted by other conflicts, and I honestly hope it stays that way. But at the very least, it just needs to be known what some of this has looked like these past few months. So we'll start off with this comment, and it isn't even just that. She has clearly expressed multiple times that she wishes Indigenous people had the right to do ethnic cleansing, not just on Vosh's initial interaction, but also on the non-compete Cope stream and convo with her. How many times does someone have to dog whistle support for genocide before they get taken seriously on the left? Do you just have to say it outright? Otherwise you totally don't? Why do we not do the same when the races are switched? Could it be we're being too charitable to women of color? Yes, this is charitability. I'm the poster child for white people being so charitable towards women of color. So there are a number of people where it's been pointed out that, yeah, I've never actually said that I support genocide. I've actually said, hey, I don't. So a lot of people kind of pivot and they're like, oh, but you secretly want genocide, don't you? They think I'm doing some sort of reverse racist dog whistle, which is just not a thing. This next one is another instance where someone thinks I want to hurt white people, but I'm just giving some sort of dog whistle or just hinting at it. If you ask and don't get an answer, it's not really an assumption at that point, is it? Like, do you want to commit genocide? Tell me, yes or no. Again, the answer was and still is no. I don't want to genocide you. And I said that in the debate multiple times. Literally what I have to say does not matter. Should we not be concerned that someone with a large following sharing platforms with big leftist YouTubers has cultivated a racial separatist ethno-nationalist online circle? I would love to see this ethno-nationalist circle you're talking about. Where is it? If you don't want to be called a Nazi or a tanky, then don't use the exact talking points as Nazis or tankies. It's quite easy, actually. Just a suggestion though, Professor. Again, this just blows my mind because I didn't use any Nazi talking points. This person believes that I use Nazi talking points because Ian said that the self-determination of colonized people is a Nazi talking point, when that is a phrase literally used and recognized by the UN. Oh my God, I feel so embarrassed. I just realized that I've been throwing around the term UN as if that's something that debate bros are familiar with. UN stands for United Nations. They're an international organization that is supposed to promote peace. You might have criticisms of this organization, but they are not a Nazi organization. And you know what is actually a Nazi talking point? White genocide. Also, I'm not really a professor. I have no interest in pretending that I'm a professor. I thought it was a fun name, like Dr. Mario or Professor Oak. I would never want to pretend to be someone who has a doctorate. And no matter how much I try to make this clear, people try to hold me accountable for this, as if I'm actually going around telling people that I'm a professor at a university. Questioning your stance on geocoding non-native peoples doesn't qualify as deplatforming. You're suffering consequences for your own garbage takes. You know, I've never made the claim that I want to geocode anyone either. The issue is that she's a Black nationalist that wants an ethno-state. There's only one way to do that. Genocide. Will you ever bring yourself to actually admit genocide is bad regardless of the race of the people doing it? These comments are only a small representation of what I would get every day for months. I don't engage with these comments, I just block them. And it is still a very exhausting experience to have this, even just reading these comments to determine that I need to block these people. I am then accused of making an echo chamber, even though I simply don't owe these people an answer, let alone have addressed these things multiple times. It's also not the environment I want to create as well. I want to have a YouTube that cultivates solidarity with each other. I don't want to have one where there's a bunch of debate bros talking about white genocide, literal Nazi rhetoric. You need to take it somewhere else. They have the audacity to talk about this echo chamber when they are literally pushing Nazi rhetoric and are so ignorant they don't even know that they're pushing it. This is something that I've been dealing with every day for the past months. This has been really isolating to me. Every time that I meet someone new, I worry about them getting wrapped up in whatever narrative that I'm in. When I meet someone new, I worry that they think that maybe I went genocide. There have been a few times where someone have been, oh, I've heard of you. And my stomach drops and I'm like, oh no, like, do you think I went genocide or do you think I not went genocide? And so far it's been good. You know, the people that I've met know that that's just silly. But you know, there are also other streamers who have talked about me who think I'm an idiot, even though they don't think I went genocide. They think I'm stupid and dumb and can't argue well. So there's kind of this mentality of like, I deserve some of the harassment because I didn't argue well on a topic I didn't plan on discussing. You know, I'd like to see any of these people debate colonialism completely unprepared and see how well they do. But yeah, even when I collaborate with people and do voiceovers, debate bros will flood the comment section and say, hey, don't do a voiceover for this person because they want to genocide. So even people collaborating with me have to be careful about me. So this has just all been very isolating. This is something that's always hanging over my head, hanging over my relationships with people. And I don't want to just collaborate in a professional setting. I want to make friends. I want to hang out with people. I want to get to know people better. And this is something that's just been all present these past few months and has been very isolating. Even though there have been people who have been very kind and have reached out to me, I've still felt very separated from people. All in all, I don't need debate bros to like me. I don't need them to agree with me. I don't need them to understand me. What I need is for them to leave me alone. Another instance where I feel like I'm just a symbol is in my last video where I talk about debate bro audiences being mostly white. I show a clip of Ian and another streamer, and since then, the streamer has accused me of saying that he's white. This incident seems minor, but it's been really painful for me. I was never under the impression that this person was white. I was talking about the white audiences of these specific streamers because it's the masses of people that support this rhetoric that are the problem, more so than any individual. I've tried to clear up this reasonable misunderstanding in a pinned comment on the video and on Twitter as well, but I still get an influx of this person's audience wanting me to answer for calling this person white when that's simply not what was said. Any clarification I have doesn't matter because it doesn't fit their idea of me, and demanding that I answer for their idea of me will always be more important to them than who I actually am. Having this experience over and over and over again is very painful. Having to deal with being these kinds of symbols on a daily basis has bled into my personal life. Anytime there's conflict, I feel more on edge. There's more tension around misunderstanding, which are a normal part of life. But now there's more pressure around these issues. This has also affected my friends who want to do something to defend me, but don't really have a way to. I've seen people arguing on Twitter trying to explain that they know me and that I don't want white genocide or that I'm not whatever idea that they're proposing. And it's exhausting for them. I don't want to see my friends go through this, so I say they don't have to argue with people on my behalf, but it's really hard for them not to because that's their friend people are talking about. So having these narratives being pushed about me isn't just exhausting for me, but exhausting for people who care about me as well. Another narrative being pushed is that I'm dumb and stupid. A lot of times when these phrases are used, people are trying to communicate that they disagree with someone or that they don't like what that person is saying. But in these instances, it's far more extreme than that. Not only am I a symbol of a mad, angry black woman who wants to genocide white people, it's also being said that I'm too dumb to even understand what I'm saying. Check out this transcript of someone talking to Ian about me. It says, "She's an idiot. She thinks you can do this without that. She is wrong. That doesn't mean she endorses the thing that would happen. She's mistaken about what's in her power to do. That's my point. My point is that she's not intelligent enough to realize that her priors lead to genocide." It's really bizarre to me that this conversation is focused on how intelligent I am, rather than focusing on how bringing up white genocide causes harm to racialized people. In the most charitable cases, there are those who believe that I'm simply not intelligent enough to understand the effect of what I'm saying. Those individuals won't entertain the possibility that they might be understanding this situation entirely. And to be fair, afterwards this person told me that they don't actually think I'm dumb and felt like they had to say that I wasn't intelligent in the heat of the moment, and that at least this doesn't make it look like he's simping for me, God forbid. Regardless, I want to point out how degrading it is to have this many white people argue about how dumb they think I am. While I understand the way that Western society perceives intelligence is often classist, ableist, and racist, it's still hard not to feel less than human when people talk about me in this way. Yeah, one thing about this, too, that also really bothered me is that when you go to the comment section of this video, there's all these people just saying in the comment section, wow, this person's really smart, but I think they're wrong about this. The this being that they think he's wrong about a defense of me, because as messed up as it is, that was actually his way of trying to defend me, which just like blows my mind. But for me, this person reinforced this idea that in the most charitable case, I'm actually just too stupid to understand what I'm saying. This person reinforced that idea, and at least he gets to walk away with people going, yeah, I don't think he's right about this, but I still think he's smart. And after this happened, I was like, yeah, I'm just not talking to you. That was really messed up. Like I couldn't imagine saying that about a friend, because here's the thing. When you're debating Ian, he says a lot of messed up stuff and you're like, I don't even know which messed up thing to respond to. You just said like 5 messed up things, so I'll just respond to one. And this wasn't even just like him ignoring Ian calling me an idiot, which happened multiple times. He was agreeing with Ian and saying I'm an idiot, and then he elaborated on it. It was just like fucking disgusting, really. I was like, I can't be your friend because that was really messed up. This person never apologized for saying this either. And I was like, well, then that's just like not gonna really work for me, I'm really glad about myself that I recognize that. I think I've gotten better at like not hanging out with people who kind of say messed up stuff to me or about me. Yeah, this person was surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. Like if I said that about a friend, I'd be like, I understand. This experience is also coupled with anyone who defends me being accused of wanting to simp for me and sleep with me. When people try to defend me, they often do this by explaining what decolonization is. When these people are accused of simping for me while explaining decolonization, this undermines the importance of what decolonization is. Not only that, when people are accused of wanting to sleep with me, this also turns me into a sexual object to these people as well, when I did not opt into being that. This has really disturbed me. It reminds me of the experiences I've had of guys who think I'm dumb, look down on me, but also while wanting to sleep with me. In these instances, I don't think I'm human to these people. And these experiences feel very similar to that and just as disturbing to me. Another narrative that seems to have been pushed is that I'm a narcissist. A bit ago, someone messaged me to let me know that Ian called me a narcissist on stream. I didn't watch the stream to verify if this was true or not, as it's not something I need to expose myself to, but people from his audience do make this claim about me. I'm not sure if they simply call anyone they disagree with a narcissist, or if it's just me. But either way, personality disorders are not an insult. Let professionals diagnose you, or let people who care about your well-being bring that up so people can find help and heal. But you don't just throw a personality disorder around, especially as an insult that emboldens your audience to harass that person. Another thing that was really disturbing to me was that a fan of Ian made a video on me and the thumbnail was a picture of a black Hitler. Well, I haven't watched this video because, again, I'm not going to expose myself to that. People who watched it told me that it was an edit of the debate where clips of me were put together to change the meaning of some of the things that I said. This was apparently to the extreme where when I repeated back what Ian said, this was clipped to make it sound as if I was the one saying this. I've heard that people in the comments wrote that they don't remember me saying these things and are in disbelief at how unhinged I am. It's very bewildering that Ian's audiences accuses others of misrepresenting him, yet go out of their way to make and support something like this. Just the Black Hitler thumbnail on its own is extremely racist. Again, I'm not talking about white genocide. Ian is. And that literally is a Nazi talking point. Second, Hitler murdered black people. Nazis still murder black people. It is blowing my mind that white people are talking about white genocide and making a thumbnail with a Black Hitler on it. And the people doing this don't have the awareness of how racist this is. It wasn't until I saw this that I realized that people literally think I'm a black supremacist. This is not just an accusation that you throw around. If someone's a black supremacist, they'll say so. And even though being a black supremacist is very, very uncommon, what's not uncommon is for white people to make accusations like this to dismiss black people. Overall, when I see people compare me to Hitler, I think these people would be happy if I killed myself. And recently, when I felt suicidal, I actually get really angry because I'm not going to give any of those people that satisfaction. Just to drive in why I think this is so disturbing. In Western culture, Hitler is probably one of the most or the most hated person in history, and people are comparing me to him. People are saying that I want genocide, black ethnostates, and are comparing me to someone who has genocided millions of people. And when this happens, it feels like people want me to die. They think I need to be stopped in a similar way that Hitler needed to be stopped. And the way that he was stopped is that he killed himself. So far, no one has explicitly said that's what I need to do. And yet, it has really felt like that's what people think I should do. And seeing a thumbnail of a black Hitler in a video made about me really drove that in. These people think I need to be stopped in the same way that Hitler needs to be stopped, which is rarely talked about in the form of violence. But I don't think these people see me as any different. Something that's been really frustrating to me about this is that I can imagine a few years later, many of these people will realize how racist this is, yet they'll never be held accountable for what they've done. Instead, they'll blame it on their younger selves and say that they went through a phase. They don't have to deal with the consequences of their racism. But I do. I have to deal with the racist narrative of white genocide. I have to deal with these racist comparisons to Hitler. And I have to deal with the racist symbol of being the mad, angry black woman, while this audience will never be held accountable. Lastly, I want to talk about how people are talking about my adoption. Some people who believe I went white genocide are theorizing that it's because I was adopted by a white family. And I can't really express how disturbing this is. That when they learned that someone is adopted, this is a place that they went to. Maybe debate bros in particular don't know many people who are adopted, so maybe they don't understand just how messed up this is. Most adopted people don't think of their adopted family as being their adopted family. That's just your family. My parents don't see me as their adoptive kid, and I don't see my parents as my adoptive parents. That's just my mom and dad. And you're talking about them in the context of your white genocide narrative. You're talking about my mom and dad in the context of your white genocide narrative. I can express the layers of how vile this is. Just dealing with thousands of white people accusing me of wanting white genocide is a lot to deal with on its own. And then bringing my mom and dad into that, I have no words. Another type of comment that I've received is that my white family gave me a good life, and I should be grateful. I see these kinds of comments a lot when there are adoptees who talk about struggles around adoption, but it was especially gross to see comments like this be used to push a narrative about how I'm ungrateful to my white family, and that I went to genocide white people because of my ungratefulness to them. Regardless of someone's race, don't assume that an adopted family gave a child a good life. You just don't know. But especially when it comes to transracial adoptions, transracial meaning that a family adopts a child of a different race, not that the person has changed races. There are so many racial issues that come with these kinds of adoptions. There is a problem with white families thinking that they can help Black children by helping that child assimilate to whiteness. That in itself is a problem. Even if a family can offer financial stability or a good home life, which is not always the case. Growing up in an environment that punishes you if you try to appreciate Black history and culture, but rewards you for assimilating into white culture is a traumatizing environment to grow up in. So don't say that to adoptees. Don't assume that they were given a good life simply because they were adopted. And don't assume that the adopted family was also financially stable and had a healthy family dynamic, because that's also not always the case. So this is another thing that I just do want to expand on, actually. So a lot of times I'll see people say that adopted kids should just be grateful that somebody took them in. Not only is that not true, it's an extremely bigoted thing to say to someone. Adopted kids are still children. And if you're an adult, not prepared to have kids, but are choosing to have kids, that's on the adult, not the child. It's never a child's obligation to be thankful for being brought up in a harmful environment, adopted or not. I think that's something that people don't really understand about adoption, is that you are specifically going out of your way to have a kid. Sometimes people can accidentally get pregnant and then decide to have a kid, but you don't actually accidentally adopt a child. So if you're going to intentionally adopt a kid, don't put them into an unhealthy environment. That responsibility is on the adult, not the child. So if you're going to be adopting kids with this mentality that this kid needs to be grateful no matter what happens, then you shouldn't be adopting. Stop putting that on adoptees. It's dehumanizing. Just as biological children don't need to feel grateful and obviously have a complex relationship with their parents where there's often love and also areas where they feel let down, it's the same with adoptees. What I'm trying to say is I love my parents and have a relationship. It's not about owing them something, just as it's not about owing your parents something with biological children. So please don't condescend to adoptees and let us be fully human. It honestly feels dehumanizing to me that I have to even say that adoptees still have these human experiences of these complex relationships with your parents, just as biological children do. With that said, when there's conflict between my parents and I feel really sad about it. Most people want to get along with their parents, wish that they could, and being adopted doesn't make that any different. When there is conflict with my parents, I would like for there to be a way to work out that conflict, as many people wish with their parents as well. And the fact that people saw a Black adopted person talking about colonialism, and they thus concluded that I wanted to genocide my family, is so disgusting. Me being Black, me being adopted doesn't change that I love my family. And the fact that you were able to see a Black adoptee and make these conclusions about white genocide, so disgusting, so racist. I have no words. I grew up around white conservative Christians and I've never experienced something so racist. Not when I was called the N-word, not when parents didn't want me hanging out with their kids because they see that I'm Black, not the racial profiling that I grew up with. None of my experiences compared to this. Absolutely disgusting. So at this point, I think I've hit some of the abusive comments that maybe aren't as obvious as to why they're abusive, but I also want to acknowledge the ones that are more obvious. Again, just so that it's known that this has been happening. I've gotten sexual harassment where people have talked about my sexual body parts in really derogatory ways. I've also been sent pornographic pictures. A couple of them each had a Black and white person each other off. I'm sure there's some sort of racial meaning about me in there. The person sending this said in a tweet, "I swear to Professor Flowers is going to turn me into the Joker if she does not delete her YouTube and Twitter." I've gotten messages from white supremacists. One had a really racist caricature of a Black person and said us Black people shouldn't debate Bosch because we have a low IQ. I've got another message that called me a and said that they are going to send me back to Africa. I've also just seen some comments from right-wingers saying that colonized people lost, white people won, so colonized people should just stop complaining. I don't really have much to say about these kinds of comments and messages. As a Black content creator, I know I will just get horrible comments and messages like these. But the reason why I'm saying this is because I've gotten a significant influx of these types of comments and messages, specifically from the debate bro community, and even actual Nazis who overall don't like Ian, but agree with certain points that he's made. And that just needs to be known. People keep on saying that I'm obsessed with Ian, but if you look up my channel, Professor Flowers, on YouTube, you mostly won't even see my videos. Most of it is content of Ian talking about me, and this has encouraged his audience to go after me. When Ian says that I'm not getting harassed, but that people are just being mean, it just seems like something a person would say, so they or others can continue to be abusive or neglectful of the abuse they inspire. This abuse has real effects on people. Most people already have enough trauma to work through, let alone go through something like this. As I've already said, this is not drama for the people who are going through this. If this keeps on happening to people, this is going to kill someone. To be very clear, since I'm under a lot of scrutiny, me saying that someone can be killed from this is not a threat. This is me talking about suicide. I think when someone in the future goes through this kind of harassment, and if this person has struggled with suicide or is prone to that, I don't think that suicide would be an unlikely possibility, and we should really try to reduce this kind of harm to people. This kind of abusive behavior needs to stop. I'm not the first person to go through this with debate bros. I'm not the last, and I hope whoever goes through this next will be okay. Now, since we're talking about abuse, I think it's worth mentioning how people have been abusive towards debate bros. Although nothing I've seen scales in comparison to the harassment campaigns debate bros have done, I still think it's important to note that when we use abusive language to criticize them, it's still abusive. And I want to ask people who are critical of debate bros to not perpetuate the systems of oppression we're trying to fight. I recorded this part before Ian used misogyny to call out J.K. Rowling. I think a lot of people are already talking about not using abusive language to call people out, but I think it's still worth expanding on. For example, I see a number of comments making fun of Ian's weight. There's nothing wrong with his weight, and when people make fun of this, they're sending the message that your weight is a moral issue. It makes people feel as though your weight is something that can earn you love and respect or prevent you from it. These kinds of comments punch down on everyone. So I want to ask people to punch up and use humor that criticizes actual issues in what Ian is saying or the effects he has. Another example of this is making fun of people's intelligence. A lot of people use words such as dumb or stupid, but I think what's not being thought about is why someone's intelligence is even an insult in the first place. The way we understand intelligence is often rooted in ableism, classism, sexism, and racism. Your intelligence is not a moral failing, and it's rarely if ever the issue. The issue is often ignorance, a lack of empathy, or a lack of care. And if someone is cognitively different and is struggling, that's not the issue or fault of that person, but the fault of the society for punishing these cognitive differences rather than being accommodating. So all in all, I know that people don't always mean to use the words dumb or stupid maliciously, but I want to ask people to think about the issues in someone's level of intelligence in being made an insult. And instead, I want to ask people to use more descriptive words that help explain the criticism that we're actually trying to get at. Sometimes when I ask people to be considerate of this, they think that I'm being too sensitive. Well, most people are very sensitive. A lot of people who think they aren't clearly are. Look at debate bros. I'd much rather live in a world where we can acknowledge that we're sensitive and be able to hear and understand what hurts us, rather than pretend that we don't get hurt. Pretending that you don't feel is not emotional maturity. It's dealing with your emotions that is. So let's stop pretending that we're not sensitive and try to understand how to be present with ourselves and take care of our emotions. People also might think that I'm saying that we can't express ourselves, that we can't express our frustration, or use humor to criticize people who have no interest in understanding the harm they've caused. And that's not at all what I'm trying to say. I think humor and self-expression are very important tools for criticism, as long as we can do this without perpetuating the very problems we're trying to end. So that's what I have to say about harassment and abuse. The last thing I want to focus on is what would help me and moving forward. What would help me is if people really do want to comment on the debate I had with Ian, to at least look into the full context of what happened before talking about it. I really tried to avoid people talking about me, but the other day I happened to see someone stream on the debate I had with Ian. This person said that they don't know anything else about the situation, but kept on asking questions like, why didn't Professor Flowers research Ian more? Why was Professor Flowers not that prepared for the debate? These are all questions where there are readily available answers, and it's really hurtful to see people make commentary videos without understanding the situation. I myself wouldn't do that. When I made my video on Ian, I spent hours and hours looking over debates to make sure that I didn't misrepresent what was going on. Obviously, this conversation is so much bigger than Ian and I, and people are going to say what they're going to say. But I at least want to put it out there that it would help me if people did their due diligence and understood the full context before discussing what happened. Ultimately, the most helpful thing people can do is to focus on correcting the misinformation around decolonization, rather than focusing too much on me. When misinformation is spread, we need to do our best to correct that. When the debate on Black nationalism happened, people had no idea what Black nationalism was, but were afraid of it. Instead of listening to the many Black people who said that it's about Black liberation, not whatever racist narrative that Ian was going on about, white people had no interest in this, and instead preferred to listen to other white people who were also confused about it. When misinformation on important topics is spread, We need to correct it. The record on LANDBACK and decolonization was never fully corrected. Some people are still worried that LANDBACK is about genocide or ethnostates. We're leftist. We need to not only understand LANDBACK, but prioritize it. Overall, the conversation of decolonization is a massive topic, but it's a very important one. One that needs to be at the forefront of any leftist movement. Decolonization tackles issues around climate change, ongoing colonialism throughout the world, and how we can be co-caretakers of this planet rather than owners. It's beautiful and inspiring, and we really need to get on board with what Indigenous activists are doing. You know, as I'm editing this, I know that people will say an Indigenous activist went onto Ian's channel who I have disagreements with, so how can I possibly be talking about listening to Indigenous activists? As I've already said in this video, I apologize for the redundancy, but, to be very clear, my issues with her aren't what she said on LANDBACK. My issues are how she accused me of using inflammatory language when I'm not the one bringing up white genocide and white ethnic cleansing, and I'm actually the one saying that LANDBACK is not about these things, and how her accusation was used to fuel the narrative of white genocide and encourage the harassment I've been experiencing. While I don't think her intentions were to fuel the harassment I experienced, that is certainly what happened. With all that said, I think my criticism of her is more than charitable. That aside, I think debate bros have a particular issue with toxic masculinity, where they think that listening to people means that you have to concede that the person you're listening to is right. First off, that's a really hard way to be in the world. Secondly, they don't understand that there's other options. One is where you can listen to someone and seek understanding and come out of that having more perspective on the experience of others. It's the ability to understand people that's far more important than the ability to win. The fact that debate bros hide behind this one Indigenous person to push the narrative of a fear of white genocide, rather than seeking the views of multiple Indigenous people, shows that they don't want to understand. They want to win. Honestly, it's really gross to me to see as well, because the debate was supposed to focus on Ian's treatment of other Black people. So the way that he can just make it about LANDBACK when that's not what the debate was about and hide behind it is disgusting. I don't think any of these people want to talk about LANDBACK. They seem to be interested in winning. I'm not interested in winning. I'm interested in self-expression and understanding. And as long as debate bros don't get this, the idea of listening and understanding won't make any sense to them. And that's why it's so confusing that I can criticize how an Indigenous person portrayed me, yet uplift the voices of other Indigenous people and their work. I'll link some resources of videos, panels, and books to learn more about LANDBACK and decolonization in the description below. But right now, I want to play this clip of Vijay Prashad. This is Prashad talking at the COP26 Coalition's People Summit for Climate Justice. This speech is also used as an intro when Prashad talks on the Red Nation podcast, which is also linked in the description below. I find this speech to be so inspiring, and it helps me understand just how important decolonization is and what we need to be focused on. And I hope that can be communicated with you as well.
Will this fight ever end? Well, first, Usher, thanks for forcing me to come to Glasgow. When I walk the streets of cities like this, Glasgow was the UK's second most important city. Beautiful buildings, beautiful streets, a gorgeous city. It had Red Clydeside in 1919, the uprising to create a Soviet in Scotland. But it was, crushed, of course. When I see cities like this, I think also about the other side of it. There's a phrase from Walter Benjamin: every monument of civilization is also a monument of barbarism. I think of the famines in Bengal, the jute workers in Bengal sending jute to Dundee through the Glasgow port. I think of human beings from Africa enslaved and brought from Ghana to the New World, and all those prophets getting sucked into cities like London and Glasgow. Between 1765 and 1938, the British Isles stole $45 trillion pounds from India, 45 trillion sterling from India. We never got paid for that. When the British left India, when we threw the British out, our literacy rate was 13%. So much for several hundred years of so-called civilization. Meanwhile, our landscapes were destroyed. Coal was foisted on India. You foisted coal on us. You were the ones that came and made us coal dependent. And then you left, and now you dare to condescend to us. When I listen to Boris Johnson, when I listen to people like Joe Biden, when I listen even more to Emmanuel Macron, all I can think of is how condescending you are. You condescended to us 400 years ago. You condescended to us 300 years ago. You condescended to us 200 years ago. You condescended to us 100 years ago. You're condescending to us today. You only know condescension because for you, Colonialism isn't something that happened in the past and we defeated you. It's not that. For you, colonialism is a permanent condition. And that permanent condition happens in two ways. There's the permanent condition of the colonial mentality. You want to lecture us. You want to tell us that we are responsible for all the problems because you'll never accept that you're the one principally to blame. You signed the Rio Formula in 1992 on common and differentiated responsibilities. You like the common part. You like the common part. You like to say we're all in this together and so on. We're not in this together. The United States, 4-5% of the world's population, still uses 25% of the world's resources. You outsource production to China, and then you say China is the carbon polluter. China's producing your buckets. China's producing your nuts and bolts. China's producing your phones. Try to produce it in your own countries and see your carbon emissions rise. You love lecturing us because you have a colonial mentality. Then there are colonial structures and institutions. You lend us money, and every time you lend us money, which is our money, every time the International Monetary Fund comes to our societies and they tell us, here's the money we are giving you. No, it's our money. You give us our money back as debt, and then you lecture us about how we should live. It's extraordinary. It's not just a colonial mentality. It's the colonial structures and institutions which reproduce themselves year after year after year. And let me tell you something. The climate justice movement, not clued enough on this. The climate justice movement is a movement that says we're worried about our future. What future? What future? Children in the African continent, in Asia, in Latin America, they don't have a future. They don't have a present. They're not worried about the future. They're worried about their present. Your slogan is, we're worried about the future. What future? That's a middle-class bourgeois Western slogan. You got to be worried about now. 2.7 billion people can't eat now. And you're telling people, reduce your consumption. How does this sound to a child who hasn't eaten in days? You got to clue into this, guys. You got to clue into this. Otherwise, this movement will have no legs in the third world. No legs. Later, I'd like to tell you about the International People's Assembly, a network of 200 political organizations that we're setting up, rooted in the global south. We want to tell you what our issues are, but are you willing to listen?
That's why we need to focus on decolonization. So when the topic of white genocide comes up, don't focus on me, focus on this. Focus on what decolonization is. If you're still learning, post one of the sources so that people can learn more. For example, if somebody says that Professor Flowers wants white genocide, maybe just say something like, hey, that's a really racist talking point, and that's not what's being talked about. This is what decolonization is. Colonialism is ongoing and has deep-rooted effects around the world, and bam! Now the focus is on decolonization and is now hopefully correcting misinformation rather than focusing on me. If they try to bring it back to me, just try bring it back to what decolonization actually is. And hopefully that will make me less of a target for harassment while also correcting the record on decolonization. So moving forward, what do we do about this debate bro issue? I've seen a problem where people will see someone getting mistreated by Ian's community, make a video on that, and then go on to Ian's stream. And when this person goes on stream, whatever harassment that person originally intended to point out is then exacerbated. This pattern happens time after time and is very frustrating to see. I myself came to understand this frustration personally when a friend of mine wanted to debate Ian after I went on stream with him. At first I was so mad that this friend wanted to debate Ian after I had had such a painful experience. And then I realized, oh, you're just trying to defend me. In the same way that I wanted to defend others. You're actually just trying to be a good friend. And when I realized that, I wasn't angry about it anymore, even though I think debating Ian would be a horrible idea. I think the sentiment was really kind. And that's how I've come to understand the other people who go on his stream and try to defend the people they see being mistreated. I think the intentions are very kind. And we need to stop doing this. If we want to criticize Ian or other debate bros, I think at most we should make a video on it and then move on with our lives. I don't think debate bros hold as much power as they often claim. They have the ability to affect their communities, and when they say something silly, we have to hear about it on Twitter. But I don't think they have the power of an entire movement. This is anecdotal, but none of the activists I know have any idea who any of the debate bros are. When I ask other people who organize, they haven't heard of them either. I don't think they have people on the ground to mobilize. In many ways, their reach seems to be limited to their community and when they go after other leftists. This is certainly an issue, but it hopefully doesn't have as broad of a reach as we might initially think. And while it is an issue that for many people, their introduction to leftism might be a debate bro video, I don't think it makes sense to put all of our energy into criticizing them. I think it makes more sense to put our energy into building the kind of leftist movement we want to see on those platforms. YouTube has its limitations. It's hard to use it for local issues as people from different places are watching, but this platform can disseminate broader information and we can talk about ideas and humanizing narratives. And I believe that's very powerful. So for me, when it comes to leftist YouTube, I would like to see content that humanizes marginalized people by sharing each other's stories and narratives and also having entertaining yet educational content. I want to uplift Black voices. I want to see us use our platforms to be able to bring important issues to the forefront, such as colonialism. I want to see those who are the most disenfranchised have a voice, and to see us uplifting each other. I want to see us make content that humanizes ourselves to each other and to celebrate each other in that. And if we can do that and listen to each other and learn from each other, I think that we can get a lot of use out of this platform. That's a part of the left that I want to see, and that's what I'm going to try to build. And I really hope I can do that with you all. So as this video is wrapping up, I don't think this video would be complete if I didn't thank all the people who have been so kind to me during such a turbulent time. The messages I've gotten, the people who have reached out to me, the people who have invited me to their communities, the people who have not just tried to defend me, but the ability to talk about colonialism, and have also invited me into learning in community with each other. All of this has been very profound. These past few months have been really hard for me, and there have also been these very profound moments of kindness. And that's even more important than these series of painful events that are very real, but are ultimately a distraction from what's important. So thank you so much to everyone for the support and kindness shown. I really can't say how much it's meant. Like, I've really wanted to defend people that I care about. And I think it's meant a lot that people have seen my intentions. It's meant a lot that people were able to see that. It's meant a lot that people have been patient with me, trying to figure out how to handle, this situation. It's meant a lot that people have tried to defend me, but not just defend me, but to kind of be able to come together, be able to talk about these issues, be able to be collaborative. That's meant a lot to me. Yeah, I'm really hoping that I can move on from this, and be collaborative with people without this being so present. And I am really thankful to all the people who have reached out to me who, whether it just be collaborative as something more professional or collaborative as in something even as friends. I'm just very thankful to everyone. Before I end this video, I want to give some shout-outs. The first person is Art of Paya. She has really great videos where she talks about things while drawing. Her most recent video is talking about the trauma of work, and it's an excellent video, highly relatable, and down to earth. So please check it out. And what coincides with this is she's also raising money to quit her job and try to find some space because of that trauma from work. So please check out her channel and donate in the description below. Secondly, I want to give my friend Nick a shout-out, who I mentioned earlier in this video. Both Nick and Mike have a Star Trek podcast. It goes over Star Trek from a leftist perspective. It's queer, wholesome, and wonderful. Pretty much anything that Nick makes is such a breath of fresh air, just a wholesome piece of the internet. And how often can you say that? So please go check out their work. And also at the time of this video, you can still donate to Gina's GoFundMe, which is Nick's sister who has gone through a lot. So please donate to Gina's GoFundMe. And also, I'll drop Gina's and Nick's conversation in the description as well. It's very moving, so I highly recommend it. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to BP, aka Big Villainous. Big Villainous just dropped an album called House of Usher, which is the music playing right now. House of Usher is a hip-hop album inspired by Edgar Allan Poe. Are you depressed? Probably. So what are you doing? Go check out House of Usher. All right, everyone, this is a wrap. I know this topic is really tiresome for so many people. I just felt the need to get this all out so I can try to move on. Thank you so much for listening and hanging in there with me. Now I'm going to try to get back to making videos. Thanks, everyone.